Suddenly, on the sonar screen was the shape of a giant shark. You can see the fin, the face, and for a moment there, everybody on that ship just froze.
You are 60 feet underwater, locked in a steel cage off the coast of Mexico, when a 15-foot great white shark glides past. You have seen dozens of sharks on this dive, but this one stops you cold, because carved into her side is a scar unlike anything you have ever seen. A massive, perfectly circular wound wrapped around her entire chest, as though something tried to swallow her whole. Not a propeller, not a boat. Teeth. The bite is too wide, too clean, and too deep to match any known predator in the region. Scientists who examined the photographs were stumped. The jaw geometry simply does not fit. To leave a mark that size on a 15-foot apex predator, the attacker would have to be something we have never officially documented, something enormous, something powerful, and something that is apparently still out there. This is the story of one scar and the terrifying question it refuses to stop asking. The great white, nature's most perfect killer. To truly understand why that scar is so shocking, you first have to understand exactly what kind of animal was wearing it. Great white sharks are not just dangerous. They are the product of 400 million years of continuous refinement, older than trees, older than dinosaurs, older than most of the continents in their current form. Evolution has had a very long time to perfect them, and it shows. A fully grown female great white can stretch to 20 feet in length and tip the scales at over 4,000 pounds. Their bodies are built around speed and power, capable of bursting through the water at over 35 miles per hour during an attack. But beyond their raw speed is only part of what makes them so formidable. Their sensory systems are equally extraordinary. They can detect a single drop of blood diluted across millions of gallons of seawater. They sense the faint electrical fields generated by the beating hearts of nearby animals. They feel vibrations in the water from hundreds of yards away. Their skin is covered in microscopic tooth-like structures called dermal denticles, which reduce drag in the water and provide a layer of natural armor that is genuinely difficult to penetrate. Beneath that skin lies a skeletal framework made not of bone but of cartilage, a material that is both flexible and incredibly fast to heal. Sharks almost never develop infections from wounds, and their immune systems are so effective that researchers are actively studying them to develop new treatments for human disease. This is the animal that was bitten. Not a baby shark, not a juvenile, not a weakened or dying individual, but a healthy, mature female at the absolute peak of her species. The idea that anything could grab her, hold her, and leave a permanent circular scar around her midsection requires us to accept the existence of a predator that operates on an entirely different scale of power. And yet the evidence is right there, written into her flesh. The bite was circular, which tells us the attacker had a jaw wide enough to encompass much of her body at once. The wound was deep and cleanly shaped, ruling out a glancing blow or a scrape. It was positioned around the center of her torso, not the fins, not the tail, suggesting a deliberate predatory strike aimed at immobilizing her. She survived, which almost certainly means the attacker misjudged her size, or she managed to break free before the grip could tighten further. But her survival does not diminish the horror of what happened. If anything, it amplifies it, because whatever grabbed her let go, and somewhere out in the deep Pacific, it is still hungry. Ruling out the suspects. When news of the scar spread through the marine biology community and eventually the internet, the theories came fast and furious. People pointed fingers at orcas, at giant squid, at record-breaking great whites, and of course, at the prehistoric shadow that haunts every deep ocean mystery, the Megalodon. But before we chase monsters, science demands that we eliminate the obvious explanations first, and one by one, the obvious explanations fall apart. The first suspect most people land on is another great white shark. Cannibalism is real in the shark world. Larger individuals do occasionally attack and consume smaller ones. Territorial disputes at feeding grounds like Guadalupe can turn violent, and sharks have a well-documented system of dominance built on size. But here is the problem. Even the largest confirmed great white on record, a female named Deep Blue measuring approximately 20 feet in length, would not produce a bite with that radius. For a circular wound of that diameter to appear on a 15-foot shark, the attacker would need to be somewhere between 25 and 30 feet long. No great white of that size has ever been documented anywhere on Earth. The second major suspect is the orca. Killer whales are the only animals known to hunt great whites consistently and successfully, and they do so with brutal efficiency. In South Africa, a pair of orcas spent an entire season terrorizing great white populations along the coast, ripping out their livers with surgical precision. Great whites are so afraid of orcas that the mere sound of a pod nearby can cause them to abandon a feeding area for months. But orca bites look nothing like what was found on the Guadalupe female. Orcas have large conical teeth designed for tearing. They rip and shred. They do not cleanly crush, and orca attacks typically focus on accessing the liver, which means they tear open the abdomen. The Guadalupe scar was a clean, crushing compression wound, completely inconsistent with orca behavior. Mating injuries were also considered and quickly dismissed. Male great whites do bite females during mating. They have no hands, so their teeth serve as a grip, and this does leave scars on females, typically around the fins, neck, and flanks. But mating scars are shallow, irregular, and messy. The scar on this female was deep, geometrically precise, and located in entirely the wrong position for a mating encounter. Experts ruled it out within moments of examining the photographs, so we are left with a vacancy in our list of suspects. All the known documented predators of the Pacific have been eliminated. The wound is real. The geometry is unambiguous. And the question that remains standing after all the rational explanations have been swept away is the one that nobody in science is entirely comfortable asking out loud. What else is down there? The deep ocean, a world we barely know. Here is a fact that most people hear and immediately forget because it is simply too strange to hold on to. We have mapped less than 25% of the ocean floor with any meaningful detail. The surface of Mars has been charted with greater precision than the deep seabed beneath our own oceans. The deep sea is not just unexplored, it is actively hostile to exploration. A place where the pressure builds to levels that would crush a submarine like an aluminum can, where the darkness is so total that light itself becomes a foreign concept. The Pacific Ocean reaches depths of nearly 7 miles in the Mariana Trench, and Guadalupe Island, where that scarred shark was filmed, sits right on the edge of submarine canyons that drop thousands of feet within just a few miles of shore. The cold, dark water beneath the dive site is not just deep, it connects to one of the most biologically active and least understood ecosystems on the planet. We already know that the deep ocean produces giants, the phenomenon of abyssal gigantism, where animals in the deep grow to vastly larger sizes than their shallow water relatives, is well documented. Giant isopods, the deep-sea relatives of common pill bugs, grow to the size of footballs. Colossal squid reach lengths of up to 45 feet. Giant squid, once dismissed as pure mythology, turned out to be entirely real. The deep has a long history of making fools of people who thought they knew its limits. Among the lesser-known candidates for the Guadalupe bite is the Greenland shark, or its Pacific cousin, the Pacific sleeper shark. These animals are enormous, slow-moving, and deeply mysterious. Greenland sharks have been found with polar bears in their stomachs. They are known to feed on sleeping or sluggish prey. They do not chase, they suffocate and crush. A Pacific sleeper shark living in the deep cold waters off Mexico, growing unchecked in the pressure and dark over decades, could theoretically reach sizes we have never observed. Their bites are crushing and circular, consistent with what was found on the Guadalupe female. There is also the squid hypothesis, which sounds absurd until you look at the anatomy of a giant squid's suckers. Each sucker ring is lined with serrated chitinous teeth, capable of cutting through flesh. A defensive strike from a large squid, latching onto a great white that ventured too deep into cold water in search of prey, could produce wounds that superficially resemble a bite mark, circular, sharp-edged, and deeply traumatic. The truth is that the ocean does not owe us an explanation. It has been keeping its secrets for 4 billion years, and it is under no obligation to stop. The Megalodon question. No conversation about an inexplicably large bite mark on an ocean predator can avoid the name that lives permanently in the dark corners of marine mythology: Megalodon. The word means big tooth in Greek, and the name is deserved. Individual teeth from this prehistoric shark have been recovered at over 7 inches in length. For comparison, the largest great white teeth typically reach about 2.5 inches. If the teeth scaled proportionally to the rest of the animal, we are talking about a shark that reached lengths of 50 to 60 feet and weighed in excess of 50 tons. Megalodon ruled the oceans for roughly 13 million years. It fed on whales. Its jaws were wide enough to swallow a small car. And according to the fossil record and the best available scientific evidence, it went extinct approximately 3.5 million years ago when global ocean temperatures dropped sharply and its primary prey species migrated to colder, shallower polar waters that the Megalodon, a warm water apex predator, could not follow. This is the official position of mainstream paleontology, and it is well supported, but it has not stopped a persistent, passionate, and growing community of researchers and enthusiasts from pointing to anomalies like the Guadalupe scar and asking uncomfortable questions. The deep ocean, they argue, is large enough and unexplored enough to conceal a remnant population of any animal. We spent centuries insisting the coelacanth was extinct before one turned up alive in 1938. The megamouth shark, a species reaching over 18 feet in length, was completely unknown to science until 1976, when one became entangled in a naval anchor off Hawaii. The most frequently cited piece of circumstantial megalodon evidence is a 2014 incident off the coast of Australia. A 9-foot great white shark had been tagged by researchers tracking its migration patterns. The tag transmitted data as expected for several months, and then something extraordinary happened. The tag suddenly registered a depth dive to nearly 2,000 feet, followed immediately by a temperature spike from 46 degrees Fahrenheit to nearly 80 degrees. The interpretation is straightforward. The shark was eaten, and the tag ended up inside the digestive system of a much larger animal. The warm internal temperature is consistent with a large marine mammal or a significantly larger shark. The tag eventually washed ashore days later, having been expelled or released from whatever consumed the great white. It contained no other physical evidence, but the data it recorded told a story that researchers have been debating ever since. A 9-foot shark simply gone, swallowed whole by something that dives 2,000 feet and runs warm. Science does not embrace megalodon survival without compelling physical evidence, a body, a tooth, a DNA sample. But science also does not demand that mysteries be comfortable. What the scar is really telling us: step back from the speculation for a moment and look at what we actually know. A large, healthy, mature female great white shark was found carrying a massive circular scar consistent with a crushing bite from an animal considerably larger than herself. She survived. The attacker remains unidentified. Every known predator in the region has been evaluated and found inconsistent with the wound pattern, and the event happened just a few hundred feet above water that drops off into unexplored darkness within a mile of the dive site. The scar on that shark is not just a wound, it is a document. It records in permanent biological ink the existence of a violent encounter between the apex predator of the modern ocean and something that treated her as prey. Whatever perspective you bring to that fact, scientific skepticism, open-minded curiosity, or genuine unease, the fact itself does not change. Something bit her, something big. What the scar tells us most powerfully is not about the Megalodon or the sleeper shark or any specific creature. It tells us about the limits of our knowledge. We tend to relate to the ocean as though we understand it, as though the species we have cataloged represent the full inventory of what lives there, as though our maps and our sonar and our submersibles have given us a reasonably complete picture of what the deep contains. The Guadalupe scar is a direct challenge to that assumption. As ocean temperatures continue to rise due to climate change, the behavioral patterns of deep-sea animals are already shifting in ways we are only beginning to track. Great whites are appearing in regions where they have never previously been observed. Migration routes are changing. Prey species are relocating. The vertical boundaries that may have previously kept deep-dwelling giants separated from surface-level predators are not fixed. They are dynamic, shifting with temperature gradients and oxygen levels in ways that create new intersections between worlds that have been separate for millions of years. Better technology is steadily narrowing the distance between us and the deep. Autonomous underwater drones can now reach depths that would have been inaccessible a decade ago. Advanced imaging systems are mapping the ocean floor with increasing resolution. Deep-sea cameras, triggered by motion and running on long-life batteries, are capturing footage from places no human being has ever seen. One day, in all likelihood, we will get our answer. Whatever made that mark will be identified, documented, and named. Until then, the ocean keeps its secret. The scar keeps its mystery. And somewhere below the sunlit surface of the Pacific, something very large is still going about its business, utterly indifferent to the fact that we are up here desperate to know what it is. The deep does not answer to us. It never has. But every now and then, it leaves us a message. And this time, it wrote that message on the side of the most fearsome predator we thought we knew.